You mentioned the term structure, which I think is a fantastic way to frame a lot of the stuff that you just mentioned. But essentially, um, it's very tough to bottle the chaos of combat, right? And if there's no way to present some kind of a structure or tactic or and we used to talk about even this theories of power, right? I mean, there are different movement patterns you find across multiple disciplines that are um, often unique. I mean, there's probably only a handful across all martial arts, but they're different enough across those martial arts that it makes a big difference in the way that you move. Whether, in ITF, we learned about, falling power or that kind of wave type power. Other disciplines, you find kind of linear movements, and even some which I saw in China were with rising movements that were very strange for me to see in the first place. But it's interesting because, as you mentioned, this idea that this won't work in a fight, that's a real difficult line to draw. And I think it usually is much more of a reflective statement around the person saying it that's kind of like, I'm too lazy to learn and apply such things, more than it is a reflection of the technique, right?
Right.
But what do you think? That being said, there might be relevance to it in some cases. So if you were to actually try to draw a line of relevance for somebody that might be doing traditional martial arts and say this is all great, like you might be developing the structure, movement patterns, reflexes, distancing, all the stuff that goes into having the right skills. But if you had to then say to that person, but okay, now if you have to use this under pressure, this is how you need to consider what you already know. Does that make sense? The what might work in a fight situation, but breaking it down to a more practical framing for them, knowing that it's a dynamic situation and everybody has different levels of competence.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, and I answer that with this. Every martial art that I've encountered over 25 years, 26 years, something like that, always has drills, right? And we drill things over and over and over again. And those drills are based on applications. Now, if you're being taught an application that has been watered down through multiple generations, then yeah, absolutely your application, your understanding of that drill. And when I say drills, I mean whether it's kata, whether it's movement foot drills, whether it's shadow boxing, whether it's escaping the mount. These are all drills from multiple disciplines that can all be interpreted incorrectly by a student who is being taught by an instructor that may not have may be lazy enough to not have the understanding of this drill. It's just what their instructor told them to do when they were 15 years old. And so, yeah, in that sense, it won't work because you don't understand it, and you don't know enough, and you haven't drilled it enough, and you haven't applied it in simulations enough for that drill to take hold in a dynamic, violent, visceral situation in which the stakes are the risk is the highest for any human being.
So if you were, a real quick question. So if you were to advise somebody that was training, if you were to give a percentage, what would you say that, and this might change over different levels of competence or development, but as a general rule, if you had somebody that was pretty good, maybe 5 to 10 years of training already, and you said, well, this is the amount of time you should allocate towards structural, foundational, classical training. and this is the percentage of time you ought to spend on simulation training or high stress, implementation.
Yeah, it's almost like asking a track or a triathlon coach to determine how long a base training and a strength training block, and it depends on the individual. If I were to write three plans, they would all start off with different goals. If I want a traditional martial arts training plan, it would be all structured, basic movement until a certain evaluation gives that student and that student's instructor or coach an idea of whether they can move to the next level. And if it were a combat sport, it would be basic structural movements and conditioning, and we would stay with that because those basic movements work in combat sports. Those are low risk, high reward movements. If I'm training a law enforcement officer or a soldier, I'm training, they're already going to have, or they may have I may give them a different conditioning plan. And then I would give them violent, highly aggressive movements in body armor and combat gear and things of that sort, and that's what that training would be structured. So that if we're to move through three plans, that but it would that's how I would look at it. But it all
Yeah.
starts with basic movement and a foundation, and then an evaluation, and then moving to a next level, and then an evaluation and moving to the next level. I don't
Right.
think I could give a percentage.